His name became synonymous with blood and betrayal in the Irish capital, a teenage gang leader whose actions ignited one of Dublin's deadliest turf wars. For years, his influence only grew, even from inside the walls of Ireland's toughest prison. He is Brian Rattigan, but to the underworld, he is known by a far more chilling moniker, King Rat. Tonight, we trace the full story of the man who ruled a criminal empire before he was even old enough to vote. From the drug seizure that sparked the infamous Crumlin-Drimnagh Feud, through his remarkable conviction history, to his current life outside the prison gates. To understand Brian Rattigan, we must first understand the Crumlin-Drimnagh Feud. It wasn't a war between established crime lords. It was a brutal split between friends. In the early 2000s, a close-knit group of young criminals in South Dublin were successfully dealing drugs, primarily cocaine. But in March 2000, a major drug seizure shattered their bond. 3 members of the gang were arrested. One man, Declan Gavin, was not charged, as he had reportedly stepped out of the hotel room moments before the Gardaí entered. The moment he walked free, suspicion fell on him. In the ruthless world of organized crime, being spared can only mean one thing: betrayal. Gavin was branded a rat. This single event split the gang into 2 major factions, one led by Freddie Thompson and the other by Brian Rattigan. Rattigan was young, ruthless, and intent on establishing dominance. The feud's first and most defining murder occurred in August 2001. Declan Gavin, the man Rattigan and his faction believed was an informer, was fatally stabbed outside an abracadabra takeaway in Crumlin. Witnesses described a masked man emerging from a car, chasing Gavin inside the restaurant, and then stabbing him in the heart before escaping. That masked man was identified as Brian Rattigan. The murder of Declan Gavin wasn't just another gangland hit. It was the starting gun for a feud that would claim at least 16 lives over the next decade. The violence was personal, retaliatory, and devastatingly swift. Within a year of Gavin's death, tragedy struck Rattigan directly. In July 2002, his own 18-year-old brother, Joseph Rattigan, was shot dead on Cooley Road, an act of brutal reprisal that only escalated the violence. By 2003, Brian Rattigan was back in Garda custody, initially receiving a 13-year sentence for shooting at Gardaí during a pursuit. But his physical incarceration was just the beginning of his legend. Most gang leaders are neutralized once they are locked up, their power base collapsing without their presence on the streets. Not Brian Rattigan. In prison, he didn't simply serve time. He ran a top-security criminal enterprise. He was first housed in the maximum-security Portlaoise Prison, where his reputation as a ferocious and unyielding criminal leader only solidified. It was behind these walls that the nickname King Rat truly took hold. The ultimate proof of his continued power came in the form of a groundbreaking prosecution. In 2008, a Garda investigation uncovered that Rattigan was running a sophisticated drug operation from his cell. This wasn't a small-time prison hustle. This was a national-level drug importation plot. Gardaí seized a massive haul of heroin, worth approximately €1 million, and traced the operation directly back to Rattigan through a mobile phone found hidden in his cell. In 2013, Brian Rattigan made history. He became the first drug dealer in the state to be convicted of directing and managing a criminal drug trade from behind bars. For this, he was handed a significant 17-year sentence. This man was a full-time gang leader, even while confined to a cell, demonstrating an incredible level of discipline and influence. All the while, the original murder case, the killing of Declan Gavin, continued its long, complicated journey through the Irish legal system. In 2009, Brian Rattigan was convicted of Gavin's murder and handed the mandatory life sentence. But the legal battle was far from over. In 2017, Rattigan successfully appealed his murder conviction. The Supreme Court ordered a retrial, citing legal errors in the original proceedings. Instead of facing a full murder retrial, however, Rattigan eventually entered a plea for the lesser charge. In 2019, Rattigan pleaded guilty to manslaughter for the 2001 killing of Declan Gavin. At his sentencing, his defense claimed he had written a letter of apology to Gavin's mother. He received a final sentence of 9 years for the manslaughter conviction. By combining the various sentences he had accumulated, including the drug-dealing conviction from inside prison, Rattigan had spent well over a decade and a half incarcerated. His prison time was defined by a constant, high-stakes battle with the state, one he often managed to influence from the shadows. As his mandatory release date approached in 2021, the whispers about Brian Rattigan began to change. Could a man whose entire adult life had been defined by violence and incarceration truly change? Reports emerged that King Rat had made a concerted effort to turn his life around while inside Portlaoise. He studied, taking classes, and even learning the Spanish language. He took up the guitar. In legal affidavits, he claimed he wanted to pursue a law-abiding life on the outside. He had served 18 years, starting as a teenager and emerging a man in his early 40s. But for Gardaí, the danger was palpable. The feud that Rattigan had been instrumental in starting had mostly quieted, but he had made countless enemies over the years. The threat level on his life was marked as severe. Gardaí maintained a strong suspicion that the man convicted of running a major drug network from his cell never actually stopped. They feared that the supposed new leaf was a facade, and that Rattigan would simply resume his life's work, controlling his gang, but this time keeping an even lower profile. In August 2021, Brian Rattigan walked free from Portlaoise Prison in the early hours of the morning. He emerged wearing a mask and a hat to conceal his face, and notably, a medal around his neck with a photograph of his murdered brother, Joey. He was driven away in a hired car, briefly returning to his home turf in Drimnagh to see family for the first time in years. Then, he vanished. Within days, sources confirmed that Brian Rattigan had acted on his prison lessons. Gardaí believe he booked a one-way ferry ticket to Great Britain, moving quickly out of Ireland to avoid the immediate spotlight and the intense surveillance awaiting him. His plans to use his Spanish skills for a move to mainland Europe remain a possibility. Today, law enforcement authorities across Europe are watching Brian Rattigan. Despite the claims of reform and a desire for a quieter life, intelligence suggests he has re-emerged as a significant crime figure. His deep-seated connections to key gangs across Ireland mean he is being monitored as a rising player in an unstable criminal underworld. Gangland violence linked to his associates has continued to surface, a constant reminder that the shadow of King Rat stretches far beyond the walls that once held him. The question now isn't if he's changed, but rather, what is the new Brian Rattigan's long game? Will he leverage the skills and connections he forged to take over a new territory, or will the weight of the past finally catch up to the man who spent half his life defined by the title King Rat? Let us know in the comments below. Do you think Brian Rattigan can truly leave his criminal past behind? The Crime Reporter. Don't forget to like and subscribe.